I agree that board games are not meant to be educational, but I think that what they get from the culture, whatever elements they're using, I expect it to be not wrong. I wouldn't mind if they come up with a new theory, right, and how they represent it. But as long as it's not wrong and comes off across as bad taste, um, otherwise it does put me off. Hi, welcome to another episode of the Hobby Hangout with Asu and Dave. Last week, we just released the video games versus board games episode. And it's top of mind because just today, actually, we started to learn how to code. We're now doing it a family activity. How did we even decide to do that? I can't remember now.
Our son was asking about wanting to, could he build a video game?
Right.
And asking it more in terms of like, is it even something he's capable of doing, sort of, right?
Yeah, and
Uh,
just for context, he's 6 years old.
yes. Not so much about whether he was allowed to do it. It was just like, is it even possible for like someone to build a video game? And we were like, yeah, absolutely. And I know we've been talking about it a little bit here and there, but on our last visit to Chapters, we looked at the computer section, found a couple of books on coding and introduction to coding, primarily leveraging Scratch. Um, and as you said, we dove into it today. How did you find it?
Yeah, it was pretty fun. I was like it's pretty easy, I think, and especially because I do have some understanding of programming.
Mhm.
So, but I think that just looking at it from a kid's perspective is making it so accessible for them to just start playing around, and it's so intuitive that I'm sure that they will start just making on their own games pretty soon. And I had fun. Just it was a very simple project, but I had fun trying to like it was hard, right?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it was fun. I especially just like seeing each of you all building. I know we were all building the same game, but
Mhm.
everyone sort of got to different points, very close to each other, but seemed to experience them slightly differently. And the screaming around the table as people were trying to beat their high scores.
Yeah, as we were testing our games.
Yeah.
I think that I really enjoyed it that even though we were in our own devices, we were all sitting together at the table. And again, because we were all doing the same thing,
Yeah.
like every single variation that was very minimal, but still like, someone will call it out. And I think that that experience of doing that as a family, it's something that I really enjoyed and looking forward to the next chapter.
Um, I don't think it's exactly the same, but to me, it also, just thinking back on it, kind of has like that foundation of paired programming, or there's another term for it. I can't remember what it is, but where you have a bunch of programmers working on the same
Mm,
project, right? I know, again, we were working on different devices, but we were all following the same steps
hmm
and all helping each other as we're coding it,
hmm
right? Um, so yeah, I
Mostly
definitely
our
learned.
daughter
Yes, yeah.
helping us.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to the next projects, and I'm sure they'll slowly start to get more complicated. And
hmm
then I know the other book starts looking at other platforms and other programming languages. So yeah, I'm sure it'll be fun.
Yeah. So today, though, we are talking about board games again, and does culture have an impact on how you perceive or enjoy the games?
Yes, more so specifically around the culture being presented in the game versus whatever your culture is,
Right.
and experiencing board games, right?
hmm
Yeah.
So, which game do you want to start picking?
Well, I kind of wanted to start with maybe not so much our culture, being of Latin backgrounds, and sort of express an opinion on other board games that are focused around a specific culture that I don't personally have any real knowledge around, right? Um, so something like Rising Sun, and you doing some investigation on that and finding that maybe some of the models and the deities that were represented in the game weren't actually of Japanese origin. But like for me, as someone that doesn't have that knowledge of it, um, I obviously didn't play the game as an educational
Hmm.
experience, right? Um, so I liked the theme of it and the aspect of the Japanese culture that was being shown there, but I didn't take it at face value as, this is a legitimate representation of their history or their culture, right? Um, and I know there's a lot of other games. What's the one I'm trying to think of right now? Blood Rage, which is looking at like the Viking culture, I think it is. And again, I don't think it's intended to be a direct representation of their history. Um, but what are your thoughts?
Well, the other one, so I think, yeah, for me, I'm aligned to what you're saying that if I don't know the cultural background, then, I can't really spot anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
And while I agree that board games are not meant to be educational, I do feel that, and coming from an underrepresented culture in board games, I do feel that if something from my culture is being used as inspiration, like, I don't think that the board game has to follow the history, right? But I think that what they get from the culture, whatever elements they're using, I expect it to be not wrong. Like, I wouldn't mind if they come up with a new theory, right, and how they represent it. But as long as it's not wrong and comes off across as bad taste, otherwise it does put me off. One of the games is what is this? Something about Hitler.
Secret Elder?
Secret Hitler. So when our friends have played it, I don't think that I have played it. And if I did, it was not necessarily because I wanted to play it. And I think from what I was reading about other people commenting on this, right, is that um, for some of them, they were saying, well, this is not actually about Hitler. This is not about Nazis. This is not politics. It's more so certain strategy, right? And like, I can't really comment on it because I don't remember the game, but I think that just the name itself, yeah, that that right away is like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
For some people, they were like, well, even if the game is not necessarily speaking to that um history time, just the name itself, like, I don't want to be represented as a Nazi or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
And so, maybe the game is great, but just from the name itself, it's like, it's not for me.
Yeah, that's fair. I know we did play that game, and mechanic wise, I don't think there's any real, um, like nothing real special to it. It's nothing new. I mean, there's lots of social deduction games out there that are very similar to it. Um, and to your point, I don't think it's intended to be an educational tool either in terms of what happened, in that time. And I'm by no means a historian or knowledgeable about it. But one aspect of it that, I guess does get me thinking about that game is not everybody may be aware of how, and again, not to get political here, like how Hitler took power. Like he actually lost the elections to become president.
Hmm.
So he lost that, but he slowly worked behind the scenes to circumvent the presidency to get, uh, people on his side to eliminate rights and things like that very slowly. It didn't happen overnight, right? It was just a slow erosion until he had overall power. Um, and I feel like an aspect of that is kind of reflected in that game where you're trying to circumvent that presidency in the game and if you have that role and try and gain those points. But to your point, like you could have done that through anything really. It doesn't have to
Hmm.
be through the theme of Hitler, right? So yeah, I agree that I also don't feel that great about playing that game.
Hmm.
It also just feels very political, and I know that maybe that's not the point of the game designers, but like there's no real um
There's no value added
there's no
by
value
grabbing
added.
that
Yeah, I agree.
cultural
I don't think
element.
there's any real value added to it because you can do that same theme through
Hmm.
any you can do that same mechanic through any theme really.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have some other examples, and I think that again, it's not to me, it's not a line of like, oh, you crossed it. I think that you have to take it within context of, is it fun, and in which way are they leveraging the culture?
And I think at the end of the day, like from a game design perspective, anybody can design anything. They can choose any culture to use the theme.
Hmm.
And realistically, it's going to come down to the audience and whether or not they buy it, right? Um, I'm not by any means suggesting that, you can't touch certain cultures, or if you're not going to do your research, don't do it. If you want to use it, no one's going to stop you. I mean, that's part of being
Yeah.
free rights and open and free speech, right?
Well, and I mean, then you also make sure that there's representation of different cultures, right?
Yeah.
So it's always nice that regardless of their background, that if there is something from your culture, from cultures that you're interested in, that you see them represented, that's really cool.
Yeah. So I think that's a plus to me, right? Even if they don't get it right, even if there may be some aspects that um, maybe don't properly reflect things or might reflect certain things negatively, there's still a plus from getting that representation to a degree, right? And at the end of the day, it's still going to come down to the the vast people, right? Like your
Hmm.
customer base, whether or not they're going to buy it and support it. And if it's not quality and it's not well representation, then people just won't buy it.
Hmm.
um, yeah.
Now, so bringing it back to our particular culture,
Yes. Yeah.
the first game that you got, it was because you were actually seeking to have a game with representation based on the book series that we were reading with our daughter, right?
Yeah. And that started because we wanted representation in what we were reading. uh, as we mentioned, we're both into fantasy and fiction novels, and our daughter's into a lot of that science fiction and fantasy as well. But I wanted to see if there was anything more representative of our Latin culture. And then I found one story or one series that not only had main characters from a Latin background, um, but it also centered around Mayan gods.
Hmm.
Um, so I was like, oh, that's neat. So we
Yeah.
started reading
I mean,
that.
that
Yeah.
Mayans is not necessarily where we
No,
descend
no,
from,
yeah,
but
yeah. But it
closer
was,
to home.
and previously to that, I know I had borrowed several books from the library for a daughter to read about like Aztec mythology and
Hmm.
Mayan mythology, and we have a couple from Peru and Inca mythology. So yeah, when I saw that, I was like, oh, let's give this book a try. So I was reading it with her, um, and again, along the same lines of like Percy Jackson, I think it's supposed to be in the same universe even, um, where they're referencing actual god names, but the representation of them isn't intended to be
Hmm.
educational, right? Um, but at the same time, at least it's creating awareness, and then
Hmm.
it's sort of up to the individual. If that's something you're interested in, then you can pursue real legitimate
Hmm.
information around this, right? So yeah, I think that piqued interest, and then I saw that there was that board game Mezzo, that focused around the various gods, and one of the main characters in the novels was Apuch, which was the god of the underworld or god of death. Um, so I saw that that was one of the deities that you could worship in this game, and I was like, oh, this is neat. I know my daughter's familiar with the title. Even in like the book series, they talk about Mayan gods, and then by the third book, they start introducing Aztec gods as like there's this war between the Mayan gods versus the Aztec gods and things like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, and that led us to this game and giving that a try. Um, I found it very similar to Rising Sun. It was sort of that area control with your various armies, and you can sacrifice people and gain bonuses for sacrifices and things like that. It was a long game, but it was still I enjoyed it, and I think our daughter enjoyed it. I'm not sure if you enjoyed it quite as much, but
Yeah, it was all right. I think one of the, I mean, because having these different cultural elements, whether it's right or wrong or how much of it impacts the game, I think at least for us, it's a good starting point of actually speaking to facts with
yeah,
our daughter. Um, but one of the things is like when you sacrifice people, like because it did happen, right?
yeah,
And I don't think that there's necessarily a good documentation of what was the purpose of the sacrifices, who were sacrificed, because most of the documentation is made from Catholics, right? So it's from a different perspective.
hmm
But just as of in today's era, it's not like we're going to be in favor of human
Yes.
sacrifices. Because I think I'm glad that our daughter didn't ask about it, but like how do you explain that to her?
Well, I mean, I know I did talk to her about it,
Oh, you did?
but also probably more than like not so much from the game because when she was reading through the Aztec history book that I have, it does cover
Mm,
like sacrifices and things like that to the gods. So she was asking about that, just why would they do that? And I think it spoke about how they would cut out the heart and things like that. So
mm-hmm,
it was, and again, not that it was being graphic, it was just being informational because it is a historical book that we have.
mm-hmm,
But yeah, I think just knowing a bit of that history, and again, not that we're saying it was right or wrong or anything. It's just it's a different era in time,
mm-hmm.
and obviously different civilizations, and they had their own cultures. But again, I think it's always important to learn more about, even if it's not your direct past, but like sort of your cultural past, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where some of those foundations came from.
Yeah. So, I mean, outcome of that is it's a good conversation starter.
Yeah.
And another one that was a very good conversation starter was Tiwanaku,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Do you want to speak to that one or?
No, because that's more.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
mom. Your mom was the one, kind of like
Yes. Yeah.
informing us better about the culture.
Well, when I saw that game in the store, I saw that it was supposed to be based on like South America, specifically Peru. And I was like, "Oh, that's neat. I've never seen that in a board game."
Mm-hmm.
So picked it up, and we played it. From a gameplay perspective, I mean, it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's that sort of like what would you call that kind of game? I'm not even sure what it is.
Deduction.
Kind of a deduction, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar to like Minesweeper, tiles, and figuring out what almost like Sudoku as well, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah,
the
because of the
numbering,
numbers.
yeah. Um, so it's definitely a fun mechanic to the game. Um, but yeah, like reading through the rule book and then asking my mom questions as we were playing the game a couple of times now, it definitely provided the opportunity to learn more about
Mm-hmm.
that history in our culture, right? And again, there was some misrepresentation in the game.
Yeah.
It doesn't discount from how the game is played, so I don't think it really impacts there. But just having that conversation, understanding that there are references in the rule book and to the story behind the game. Calling out the Quechua people, where Quechua is a language; it's not a
Mm-hmm.
people, and it's a language utilized by different cultures from those times. Uh,
Well, I mean, even now, right?
yeah,
There's
even now,
different
yeah,
there's different what would you call them? Tribes or indigenous groups
yeah,
that they have. It's not even the same Quechua, right? It's like a dialect of
yeah,
Quechua.
exactly,
Uh, but I mean, I guess someone says, "Oh, you all speak some
yeah.
sort of Quechua, then you're the Quechua people."
And that Tiwanaku itself is the culture. It is a culture of people.
And I think that one is based mostly in Bolivia.
Yes, yeah. Um, and well, like there's the ruins of Tiwanaku in Bolivia,
Hmm.
but they did spread across the Andes.
Hmm.
But yeah, just like the way the rules and the story behind the game presents it, they don't present Tiwanaku as a people. um, and I think there's just that misrepresentation or maybe misunderstanding of it through the rules.
If they made it up, then I think that's okay, right? Like to make something up because it's a game is not supposed to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
informational. However, the way that the book is written, it made me feel like it was a well-researched topic because it just sounds like very um what's the word for it?
like it was purposeful, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And so, but then it turns out that it wasn't completely right.
yeah. And again, not that it discounted from the
I
gameplay
still love that
itself. Yeah,
game.
it's still a fun game.
Yeah.
But itself did provoke good conversations between
Yeah, I did.
us and my mother and my father as well, just better to understand some of that
Hmm.
history. And
History that you didn't have access to
I had
because
no idea about. Yeah,
yeah, because you didn't grow up there.
yeah, exactly. Um, I guess we could talk about this one that we're in the middle of right now, Zolkin, the Mayan calendar.
Hmm.
I never actually researched the name. Did you research the name? Does it mean
Yes.
anything?
So Solkin. Oh, I wrote my notes in Spanish. So they did have, I believe it was 3 calendars. one that is called Solkin. Then there's another one called Have. So the Solkin is the one that have 13 months of 20 days each. But then the other one they have, that one was more focused on the seasons, which is why it had 365 days, so the same calendar that we have, because this was mostly used for agriculture, like to know when the season was coming, when rain was coming, and all of that stuff. They had 18 months because each of the months had also 20 days, and there were five days that were left over. That these 5 days were actually considered to be unlucky, or it was considered that the veil between the underworld or the spirit world and the living world was thinning. And so people wouldn't shower, they wouldn't go out, like they would just stay home, supposedly. But anyway, so yes, Solkin is one of the calendars they had. So the other one was for the seasons. And then they had another one that measured, I think it was 52 years. And so that one was meant to record dates that were important for in the future or in the past. Any births of like important people, when they had to do important rituals.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was pretty interesting. They so this game in the game itself, I really like the wheel. And then it works as a what is it called in Spanish? Sorry, in English, the
Um,
gears.
oh, like a gear?
Gears,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and so from the history, they have been using it as a gear as well, the calendars, like to see how it works, but they didn't actually use gears. It was just their calendar, right? Like that was just the
The
shape.
shape of the calendar.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because it's circular, and in indigenous cultures, like there's always the cycle,
Oh,
right?
sorry.
Like there's no end to anything. It's just continuous.
Yeah.
So that's why they had this kind of like wheel calendar. Um, and so the game represents the gears that I guess have been used by people trying to understand how it works. I think that it's just pretty cool how they designed it.
So that was kind of what I was wondering about, because when we put this together and started playing it, aside from it being a neat mechanic in the game, I didn't see how this related at all to an actual Mayan calendar. And again, not that it discounts from the game at all. It's just, like you said, I find it's a neat mechanic, and definitely a neat way to present the themes and the gameplay. Um, but yeah, from a culture perspective, aside from the designs, I don't think it really has any strong ties to the actual Mayan calendar itself.
Although, like, there's one of the areas where you can get some stuff where you need skulls and things like that, right? Like, it makes me wonder, is that based on perhaps what I was telling you about those 5 days of the thinning veil? Then you have like your harvest, or you can also like you can harvest food, which is how do you call that? The corn, maize.
Yeah,
So there's a few things here and there that I think like are kind of related. But again, is that's not the purpose of the game, right?
yeah,
The one thing though is that it has some pyramids on the background. And so you said that our son had asked whether they were real.
yeah. He was asking about whether the pyramids were real, and like where are they if they are real?
Hmm.
Because I think he did notice, because he's obviously familiar with like Egyptian pyramids,
Hmm.
but these obviously are different. Um, so I think that's what piqued his interest, is that they look different, right? They are a different type of pyramid. Um,
Are there other civilizations with pyramids?
I don't know for certain. I believe there are, but I couldn't speak to
Yeah.
them.
Because I don't feel like I see them everywhere, right? So, like, if it wasn't everywhere, then it wasn't. We don't have the same pyramids in Mexico and Egypt. Sorry, it's not the same pyramid, but you know, the
Yeah,
concept of
yeah.
pyramids. It's not like the building was the in thing to build,
No,
right?
no, yeah.
Because not everyone has them, and so, but then these civilizations are so far apart. Like, what is the reason that the pyramids exist? It's something maybe that
That
we should look into.
I don't believe they have a concrete answer to that.
Oh, that's so bad. I'm
Because
wondering about
technically
it.
there's no direct ties between them. But I guess not to go too far off topic, but that is something that, like we've been, like the books that I've gotten our daughter and our son about the sort of the history of human
Mm.
kind on Earth. One of the things that they cover in those books is how innovation that's occurred across different populations has occurred completely independent of each other. They've had no communication, but certain populations will develop a wheel because they need a wheel for specific reasons, whereas other cultures or other populations where like a wheel is not beneficial to where they are, they just never developed a wheel.
Hmm.
And the same thing goes for things like pyramids and buildings and things like that. So it's interesting just reading on that, how our species as a whole develop certain things similarly across the globe with no interaction and no communication, completely independently, but they still came to the same results
Hmm.
through innovation.
Oh, actually, one other thing. Talking about wheels, the Tiwanaku game, the wheel to discover the land
Oh,
and
yes.
to
Yeah.
verify the number. Oh, I love that thing so much.
It's very well designed, a very nice, um, almost piece of art in there.
It is,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Does it have any cultural reference?
Um, yeah, I'd say, yeah, the symbols that are being used, right? The
Yeah,
symbols
the
that
symbols, yeah.
are used are of, I
Because
want to
it's
say
a grid, right? So,
Peruvian, I guess I
yeah.
would say Andean
Yeah, probably.
descent, like the referencing to the condor, the llama, not the llama, the
Vicuña?
vicuña, yeah, vicuña. Um, can't remember what other ones were, turtle, lizard, I think, and
Hmm.
serpent, and so yeah, I think it is nice, and they've definitely done some research. Again, not to berate them, but obviously they didn't get it all right, but they definitely put effort in the research and putting that together. Um, so it is a nice
And it's
game.
beautiful. It looks very nice. And yeah, I think like when we take turns, I try to go for taking the wheel as many times as I can
Yeah.
because it's so fun to do it. Now in a not so fun game for
Not so
me,
fun game.
for me, co-op.
Why didn't you like it?
Oh, okay. So first of all, so cod, and I think I mentioned this in one of the other episodes where I was like, it probably comes from Quetzalcoatl, which is kind of like a god,
Mhm.
and it's the feather serpent. That's what it translates Quetzalcoatl to. And then I figured Quetzalcoatl is way too hard to say, so maybe they just went for quad, right? So doing research though, it turns out that quad is just referring to the serpent itself.
Yeah.
And let me take out my notes again. So quad. So like I said, it means serpent in Nahuatl. And so this serpent actually is referenced in other parts of the history, I guess. And it is part of the Aztec calendar.
Mhm.
And this is actually where I learned that the Aztecs also had a calendar of 260 days, of 20 days every month, just like the Mayans, which is funny, right? Because they're
Yeah.
different. But anyway, so one of the days, or I think it was the month, I can't remember now, but it was called Cod, and it represents another god, which is called Xiuhtecutli, which is the god of fire, day, and heat. But so it doesn't have anything, absolutely anything to do with Quetzalcoatl in the Aztec calendar. Um, so then, as I'm reading through the rules, and the idea is that you're a painter, and yeah, like you're trying to get to make the most beautiful feather
Serpent, yeah,
serpent, right?
to
Um,
appease the gods.
yeah, to appease the
Yeah.
gods, because we're talking about feathers, and even the cover is feathers. I thought this has to something to do with Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah.
So leaving that aside, I was like, okay, sure, we're building just with cards, we're building the game or whatever. But then the back of the cards or the front, I can't remember. They don't even look like, how you get in the history books the representation of the Aztecs. It doesn't look like any of their like the statues that they left behind or any kind of
No, yeah.
history, right? So it just like right away it put me off. It's not. It was just the representation of the people like that just did it for me. I don't like it.
You don't like it?
No.
So I took it from a slightly different perspective, I guess. I found the representation of the gods that they have here, to me, is from a very artistic approach,
Hmm.
is the way I see it. Because the way they're figured and painted is not, as you said, a representation of what you would see like in statues or things like that, or even of realistic people. They're very saturated in color. They're very, um, I don't know what it would be, not fuzzy, but like not blurry, but like they're not well defined
Mm-hmm.
either. So to me, I take it as a very artistic expression, sort of drawing on the purpose of the game of being artists, and you're trying to paint this mural of a feathered snake to appease the gods on the walls of the temple. Um, that's the way I kind of looked at the game, and from an artistic perspective, I actually like the paintings that they have of the gods, because they're not like these well-defined pictures. They are more of that artistry in how they're presented, and as I said, very saturated in colors and very um like just colorful in general, I guess.
Hmm. And I think colorful is fine. If there's like right now, as the way that the Mexican culture stands, if whatever we have is coming from previous cultures, then colorful is definitely something that has kind of like roots in there, right?
Mhm.
So I think that the color is right. That fuzziness, I think that that's also good to have. Um, but it's just it doesn't look like Aztecs.
You just don't like the drawings in
The
it, eh?
the face of the people of the gods, it's not. I will expect the gods to have some resemblance to the Aztecs, or yeah.
Well, I mean, but most of the gods were not represented as people either, were they not?
I can't remember that. But even then, like that would have been cool, right? Like if you had, for example, I think that Quetzalcoatl is like the animal that is related to it is a
Yeah.
jaguar. So that would have been cool to have a jaguar in there,
Mhm.
right? If you had like I don't know, like something more abstract that is not a face, that would have been cool.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. But from that in itself, I didn't find the game horrible. I mean, I enjoyed it with our daughter, and I know when we played it as a family, the kids had fun trying to
To
understand
say the word.
how to say the word, and you teaching us how to say it properly. And again, it prompted a bit of conversation,
Hmm.
right, and a bit of education, not directly from the game, but just prompting that education to the kids on the background of the word and
Hmm.
the representation that was, I guess, being attempted through the game.
Hmm.
Um, so overall, I think it was still a positive experience.
Yeah, and I think like again, whether it's right or wrong, it gives you something to talk about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a lot more. There are other games. I know we were looking at one, Cacao.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we played it previously. We were going to play it again. We didn't have quite enough time to, but we made an effort to play a couple of those games again, just to revisit them. Um, and we still got to finish getting through this
Hmm.
one here. I was surprised at how well our son is getting into this.
They
Obviously, he doesn't
understood the
have,
rules
yeah.
better than me.
Obviously, he doesn't have a lot of that forward planning,
Hmm.
from worker placement and trying to build certain things for optimizing victory points. But from a mechanics perspective, he does understand sort of where to go, how to turn the dials, how to wait to get something that he wants. Um, and he's definitely starting to move up on the pyramid tracks. Um, but yeah, overall, I think we're having fun going through this game.
Hmm. I don't think we have any other games that we can speak about, right?
From a Latin culture, no, I don't think so.
No, one of the ones that I was looking at, because I remember one of the times after I had just moved here, one of the times that we walked into a maybe it was a toy store or a game store, and I saw the Mexican train Domino's.
Oh yes, yeah.
And I was like, well, Mexico is big. There's a lot of different cultures, so maybe I haven't seen it, but like in my life growing there, I have never seen a Mexican train domino kind of thing. So I was looking into it, and it turns out that it actually originated from the Chinese. There's like different games that they have that when the Chinese came to Latin America to work on, I don't know, I think it was the trains. Then the Cubans adopted it and called it the Cuban dominoes. And so those ones, I believe, have 2 double 9 chips or something like that. So slightly different from the Mexican one, or like the version that I know from Mexico.
Regular dominoes.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't call it regular Domino's. I think it's regular depending on where you are.
I
For the
guess.
Cuban, the regular one is gonna be the other one. So then the Latin Americans were building the American rail, and the theory says that supposedly someone saw them playing, and they were like, "Oh yeah, the Mexican train dominoes," because they were playing dominoes, they were building the rails, and they probably just look Mexican. There's no real, like, there's no actual real documentation, right? But that's
Yeah.
the all the sources that I came across. Unless they maybe they're referencing each other, but that's what they all assume that happened.
Yeah. To that point, I do remember seeing that often growing up at the stores, the Mexican train, and I never understood it because anytime we've ever played dominoes at home or played dominoes even at school with other groups, I've only ever played with what I would call a regular set of
Mhm.
dominoes. Um, so I've never played Mexican train dominoes. So I'm not even sure how to play it, but I don't know who plays it. Um, but to your point, that might be something that maybe they should look at changing the name of. Because I know it still obviously sells in.
Well, it was copyrighted
Oh,
by,
really?
yeah, by a couple. Like there was the name somewhere in one of the references, but yeah, someone copyrighted, which is weird, right? Because
Uh,
I mean, it came from all those games, but whatever. But yeah, that was. I mean, when you look at the name, it kind of like makes you think that it's probably something from Mexico
mhm.
or related to it, and it's not.
Yeah.
I even remember, I think, asking my dad because he travels a lot throughout Mexico, and I figure he will know because he likes Domino's. I'm pretty sure he hasn't heard of it either.
So I think that brings us to the end of today's episode. I think
Yeah.
overall, I think our stance is culture is not a bad thing to use
Hmm.
in board games. It can definitely prompt good conversations, especially if you're playing with someone. Um, what's the right word here? That's represented through that culture. They might take
Yeah.
that opportunity just to share a little bit, um, and maybe point out where there are inaccuracies. But I think at the end of the day, we're not looking to board games as an educational
Hmm.
piece, right? Uh, Similar to like fantasy novels and fantasy or non or fiction movies, right? Um, they're there to maybe provoke some insight or interest, I guess maybe provoke some interest. And if you are interested in it, that you seek legitimate information
Hmm.
to inform yourself on it, and not use fiction material.
Yeah, and if you are not familiar with the culture that the game is based on, maybe just make sure that you check the references. You don't, like, for example, what we were saying, right, of the one game that seems like it's very legitimate what they're saying in the rules, and it turns out that there's inaccuracies. Um, so just remember that the games are made to have fun
Yeah.
and to use creativity and not necessarily to use all of the information available. So don't take it as, you're learning about a particular culture.
Yeah. All right.
Best way to learn about a particular culture to actually meet someone
Yep.
from that culture. Well, I hope this was interesting. And if you have any games that you have played where your culture has been represented, or you have done some research about how it ties to the culture,
Or
and
misrepresented.
or misrepresented, yeah, and how you feel about this conversation, let us know in the comments and subscribe for our next episodes.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.